Have you ever found yourself in the heart of nature, surrounded by breathtaking landscapes, only to realize the wild can be perilous? In remote areas where humans and wildlife intersect, the potential for dangerous encounters looms large. This video explores 6 harrowing true stories of families, hikers, and workers who face terrifying bear attacks in various parts of the world. From a serene campsite in Wyoming to the rugged wilderness of Canada, these accounts reveal the unpredictable power of nature and the critical importance of respecting wildlife. Join us as we delve into these chilling tales of survival and tragedy. On January 7, 2025, the Roberts family embarked on a winter trip to Wyoming's park, seeking peace and adventure in the snow-covered wilderness. Henry Roberts, a 45-year-old engineer, had always loved the outdoors. He believed there was no better way to bond with his family than to experience the raw beauty of nature. His wife, Jessica, a 42-year-old schoolteacher, shared his love for exploration, though she often worried about safety in such remote places. Their 2 children, Noah and Mia, aged 12 and 9, were excited about the trip, especially the idea of roasting marshmallows by the fire and playing in the snow. The family had chosen a secluded spot, far from the crowded areas of the park. The location offered breathtaking views of the mountains and dense forests. Henry had carefully planned the trip, bringing all the essentials for camping in the cold. They set up a sturdy tent and prepared for a cozy night surrounded by nature's quiet. As the evening settled, the family gathered around a small fire, laughing and enjoying hot chocolate. The stars above shone brightly in the clear winter sky, and the air was crisp and cold. Unbeknownst to them, the scent of their food and the warmth of their fire had attracted a grizzly bear, one of the park's most fearsome predators. Although bears are less active in winter, they can still wake from hibernation in search of food, especially when conditions are harsh. The bear, a massive male grizzly, silently approached the campsite. Its keen sense of smell led it directly to the source of the enticing aroma. The family, absorbed in their evening activities, remained unaware of the danger lurking in the shadows. When the bear finally revealed itself, it was too late to react. Henry, seeing the enormous creature emerge from the darkness, instinctively placed himself between the bear and his family. The animal attacked with terrifying speed and strength. Henry was mauled as he tried to shield Jessica, Noah, and Mia. His efforts to protect his loved ones were heroic, but futile against the bear's sheer power. The chaos that followed was overwhelming. Jessica screamed and tried to pull her children to safety, but the bear turned its attention to her next. Jessica was fatally injured as she attempted to protect Noah and Mia. The children, terrified and confused, became the bear's final targets. Noah and Mia, unable to escape, were both attacked and killed. The grizzly, driven by hunger, consumed parts of their remains before retreating into the wilderness. The once peaceful campsite was left in ruins. The fire had gone out, and the snow was stained with evidence of the horrific event. The quiet of the night returned, but it was now heavy with the weight of tragedy. The Roberts family's lives were tragically cut short in what was meant to be a joyful winter escape. The next morning, park rangers patrolling noticed something was wrong when the Roberts family missed their scheduled check-in. Concerned by the absence of any communication, they organized a search party. Equipped with snowmobiles and protective gear, the team began scouring the remote parts of the park where the family was known to have set up camp. The search wasn't easy, as heavy snowfall had covered much of the trails, making it hard to track movements. After hours of searching, the rangers spotted the campsite. From a distance, it seemed eerily quiet. As they approached, they noticed signs of a violent struggle. The tent was torn and partially collapsed, and the snow was marked with tracks and blood. It was clear that something tragic had occurred. The team, trained for such situations, began searching for clues to piece together what had happened. they found the remains of the family scattered around the area. Henry's body was located closest to the fire pit, with evidence suggesting he had tried to confront the bear. Nearby, Jessica's body was discovered, her injuries indicating she had been fatally attacked while protecting her children. Farther away, Noah and Mia were found, their small forms marking the tragic end of their young lives. The discovery was heartbreaking, and the Rangers took every step to handle the scene with care and respect. The bear's tracks, leading away from the campsite, confirmed that it had returned to the wilderness after the attack. Rangers marked the area as off-limits and began the process of investigating why the bear had come into contact with the family. Wildlife experts later suggested that the scent of food and the warmth of the fire had likely drawn the bear out of hibernation. The attack was deemed unprovoked but not unusual, given the circumstances. The news of the Roberts family's deaths shocked the community and drew national attention. The park, known for its beauty and tranquility, became the focus of discussions about safety in remote wilderness areas. The park authorities issued new warnings for visitors, emphasizing the risks of camping in areas known to have wildlife activity, even during winter. They also introduced stricter guidelines for food storage and campsite selection to reduce the chances of similar encounters. Friends and relatives of the Roberts family were devastated by the loss. Tributes poured in, remembering Henry's love for adventure, Jessica's kindness, and the bright futures that Noah and Mia had ahead of them. Their story became a reminder of the unpredictable dangers of nature and the importance of taking precautions when exploring the wilderness. The bear involved in the attack was never found, and experts decided not to track it, citing the importance of preserving wildlife. The focus remained on learning from the tragedy and ensuring that future visitors to the park could enjoy its beauty with greater safety and awareness. The Roberts family's story left a lasting mark, highlighting the fragile balance between humans and the wild. On November 7, 2024, the dense wilderness of Canada's Yukon Territory was covered in a blanket of early winter snow. The vast expanse of rugged terrain and winding rivers made it an ideal location for trappers. Hank and Chris, two seasoned trappers in their early 40s, were familiar faces in the area. Hank, a tall and robust man with years of outdoor experience, had been trapping in the Yukon for over 2 decades. Chris, slightly younger but equally skilled, had joined him on many expeditions. They shared a deep respect for the wilderness and understood its risks. The duo had ventured to a remote river valley near Dawson City to set up traps for the season. The area, known for its wildlife, was often frequented by hunters and trappers. Signs of bear activity were common, but the men were accustomed to the challenges. They carried the necessary equipment and followed strict protocols to avoid unnecessary encounters with wildlife. Despite their expertise, they knew the wilderness could be unpredictable. On that day, they worked tirelessly along the riverbank, setting traps and marking their routes. As they moved through the snow-covered landscape, they noticed fresh bear tracks. The large prints indicated that a grizzly had been nearby, but the two men brushed off any concern. Encounters with bears were routine for them, and they believed their precautions would suffice. As the sun began to set, they returned to their campsite, nestled in a clearing surrounded by tall pine trees. The campsite was simple but efficient. A small tent provided shelter, and a fire pit offered warmth against the biting cold. The men shared a meal of dried meat and biscuits, discussing their plans for the following day. Afterward, Hank retired to his tent, while Chris stayed outside to keep an eye on the fire. The sounds of the wilderness filled the night air, from the rustling of leaves to the distant calls of owls. Hours passed, and the camp grew quiet. Chris, feeling the weight of exhaustion, eventually entered the tent to rest. Unknown to them, a massive grizzly bear had been drawn to their camp, likely by the scent of their meal. The bear, powerful and unpredictable, approached silently through the trees. Its sheer size and strength made it a formidable predator. Suddenly, The peace of the night was shattered. The bear attacked with ferocity, tearing through the campsite. It targeted Hank first, dragging him from his tent as he slept. Hank was mauled severely, his body battered by the bear's immense strength. The noise woke Chris, who scrambled out of the tent in panic. He saw the terrifying sight of the bear attacking his partner and knew he had to act quickly. Chris reached for the flare gun, the only immediate weapon available. With trembling hands, he aimed and fired into the night sky. The bright light startled the bear, forcing it to retreat into the darkness. However, the damage had already been done. The bear retreated into the darkness, leaving Chris in the cold and eerie stillness of the Yukon wilderness. The only sounds were the crackling of the dying campfire and Hank's faint groans. Chris rushed to his friend, his hands trembling as he assessed the injuries. Hank's body bore deep gashes from the bear's claws, and his leg was mangled beyond recognition. Blood stained the snow, creating a horrifying contrast against its pristine white surface. Chris knew time was critical. He grabbed the first aid kit from their supplies, doing his best to stop the bleeding. Despite his efforts, Hank's condition was deteriorating. His breathing was shallow, and his skin had turned pale from blood loss. Chris fought back panic as he realized the severity of the situation. Their remote location meant help was hours, if not days, away. Hank's whispered words encouraged Chris to focus. Chris used what little strength he had to secure the campsite and create a makeshift stretcher from fallen branches and tarp. It was a desperate measure, but Chris hoped to transport Hank closer to a trailhead where rescuers might find them. He attached a bright piece of fabric to the stretcher as a signal, hoping it would catch someone's attention. The cold night seemed endless as Chris worked tirelessly. The northern lights shimmered above, casting an ethereal glow on the harsh landscape. As dawn approached, Hank's condition worsened. Despite Chris's efforts to keep him warm and stop the bleeding, Hank succumbed to his injuries, dying just as the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon. The sight of his friend's lifeless body left Chris numb. Grief threatened to overwhelm him, but Chris knew he couldn't afford to stay at the campsite. The bear might return, drawn by the lingering scent. He carefully wrapped Hank's body in the tarp, ensuring it was secure before beginning the arduous journey towards safety. Every step through the snow was a challenge, his muscles aching from exhaustion and the cold biting at his exposed skin. After hours of dragging the makeshift stretcher through the wilderness, Chris finally reached a trail frequently used by other trappers. He set up markers along the path, hoping someone would find him. Luck was on his side. Later that afternoon, a group of hunters discovered him, battered and near collapse. They radioed for help, and soon a rescue team arrived to transport Chris and Hank's body back to the nearest town. News of the attack spread quickly, drawing attention to the dangers faced by those who work in remote areas. Wildlife experts investigated the incident, concluding that the bear had likely been struggling to find food in the harsh winter conditions, which led it to attack. Authorities issued new safety guidelines for trappers and hunters, emphasizing the need for precautions even in familiar environments. Chris never returned to trapping after the tragedy. He carried the scars, both physical and emotional, as a reminder of the wilderness's unpredictability. The loss of Hank was a painful lesson about the delicate balance between humans and nature's untamed forces. On May 30th, 2024, Elizabeth, an experienced hiker in her mid-30s, ventured into Alaska's vast park. Known for its rugged terrain and majestic landscapes, the park offered a challenge that Elizabeth was eager to take on. She had spent years exploring remote trails across the United States and had developed a deep respect for nature. Her love for hiking began in her teenage years and grew as she sought solitude and adventure in the wilderness. The park, with its sprawling glaciers and dense forests, was her most ambitious trip yet. Elizabeth meticulously planned her solo backpacking expedition, equipping herself with all the essentials. Her backpack contained food, water, trekking poles, a satellite phone, and bear spray. She had studied the park's maps and noted areas where wildlife sightings were common. Although she was aware of the risks, her experience gave her confidence in her ability to navigate the unpredictable environment. The weather that morning was crisp and clear, with the sun casting a golden glow over the landscape. Elizabeth followed a winding trail that led her through thick woods and open meadows. She took careful steps, her boots crunching softly against the ground. As she ventured further into the wilderness, she marveled at the beauty around her, feeling at peace in the solitude. By midday, Elizabeth reached a meadow bordered by tall evergreens. Unbeknownst to her, a grizzly bear was grazing nearby, hidden by the tall grass. She continued walking, unaware of the bear's presence until she was only a short distance away. The bear, startled by her sudden appearance, raised its head and locked eyes with her. Elizabeth froze, understanding the danger of the situation. In a matter of seconds, the bear charged. Its massive size and speed left her little time to react. Elizabeth turned and ran toward a tree, hoping to climb to safety. She scrambled to grab a low-hanging branch, but before she could pull herself up, the bear reached her. The grizzly knocked her to the ground, its claws tearing into her backpack and grazing her shoulder. The force of the attack sent shockwaves through her body as she struggled to fight back. In sheer desperation, Elizabeth reached for her trekking poles, using them to fend off the bear. She managed to strike the bear's snout, but this only enraged it further. The animal's powerful jaws clamped onto her leg, causing severe injuries. Her screams echoed through the meadow, but there was no one nearby to hear her. As the struggle continued, a passing helicopter appeared in the distance. Its loud whirring startled the bear, causing it to pause and retreat briefly. The crew aboard the helicopter noticed the commotion and immediately contacted park rangers. Elizabeth lay in agony, clutching her wounded leg as blood seeped into the grass. The grizzly lingered at a distance, watching, before finally retreating into the woods. The nightmare had unfolded in minutes, leaving Elizabeth battered and alone. Elizabeth lay on the ground, trembling and gasping for breath. The pain in her leg and shoulder was overwhelming, but the sound of the helicopter gave her hope. She could feel the blood soaking through her clothing, and her energy was quickly fading. The bear had disappeared into the trees, but she knew it could return at any moment. Summoning her remaining strength, she reached for her satellite phone, though her hands shook too much to use it. The helicopter crew, having alerted park rangers, circled the area to keep an eye on Elizabeth until help could arrive. Minutes later, a ranger team arrived in an all-terrain vehicle equipped for emergencies. They carefully approached the injured hiker, scanning the area for signs of the bear. The rangers knew the animal could still be nearby, and they worked quickly but cautiously. Elizabeth was conscious but weak. Her leg and shoulder bore deep wounds, with blood still flowing from the gashes caused by the bear's claws and teeth. She winced as the rangers applied bandages to slow the bleeding and prepared her for transport. One of the rangers carried a rifle to protect the group in case the bear returned, while another monitored her vitals. They reassured her that she was safe now and would receive medical care soon. The trip back to the ranger station was slow and bumpy, adding to Elizabeth's pain. Despite her injuries, she managed to stay alert, though her thoughts were scattered. She remembered the bear's eyes, its speed, and the sheer power of the attack. The image was burned into her mind, and she struggled to focus on anything else. The rangers kept talking to her to ensure she remained conscious, asking her simple questions and providing updates about their progress. Once at the ranger station, Elizabeth was airlifted to a hospital in Anchorage. The medical team was prepared for her arrival, and she was rushed into surgery. The injuries to her leg were severe, with deep muscle and tissue damage that required multiple procedures to repair. Her shoulder also needed surgery due to the deep lacerations. The doctors worked for hours to stabilize her and prevent infections. Elizabeth's recovery was slow and painful. She remained in the hospital for weeks, undergoing physical therapy and learning to walk again. The scars on her body were a constant reminder of the encounter, but she was grateful to be alive. The story of her attack spread quickly, drawing attention to the risks of solo hiking in remote areas. Park officials reviewed the incident and issued new guidelines for visitors. Signs were posted at trailheads, warning hikers about bear activity and urging them to carry proper safety equipment. Elizabeth's experience also sparked discussions about conservation and the balance between humans and wildlife in natural habitats. While Elizabeth would never forget the attack, she remained determined to continue her passion for the outdoors. She planned to return to hiking one day, but only with proper precautions and a deeper understanding of the risks involved. On August 14, 2024, 6 friends from France embarked on a thrilling whitewater rafting adventure along Montana's Flathead River. The group consisted of Nicholas, a 32-year-old engineer, his wife Claire, a teacher, and their close friends Julien, Marie, Sophie, and Antoine. They had been planning the trip for months, eager to explore the beauty of Montana's wilderness. Known for its scenic views and challenging rapids, the Flathead River was the perfect choice for their adventurous spirits. The group started their day early, accompanied by an experienced rafting guide. The guide gave them safety instructions and provided gear, including life jackets and helmets. The friends, excited but slightly nervous, eagerly hopped into the large inflatable raft. As the day progressed, they navigated through fast-moving rapids, laughing and cheering with each twist and turn of the river. Around midday, they decided to take a break and enjoy lunch on a quiet stretch of the riverbank. This area was surrounded by dense forest, with towering pine trees and a peaceful atmosphere. The guide had initially suggested a different location, but eventually agreed to their request to stop here. They pulled the raft onto the shore and began unpacking sandwiches and drinks, chatting about their morning adventures. Unbeknownst to them, the riverbank they had chosen was close to a mother bear and her cubs. The bear, hidden among the trees, noticed the group and became agitated. The scent of food and the presence of humans near her cubs made her increasingly defensive. Nicholas, who had wandered slightly away from the group to take photos of the river, unknowingly ventured closer to the bear's territory. As the group continued to enjoy their lunch, the mother bear emerged from the forest. Her sudden appearance startled everyone. The guide immediately recognized the danger and shouted to the group to return to the raft. Nicholas, still a short distance away, froze as the bear charged toward him. The bear knocked Nicholas to the ground, swiping at him with her powerful claws. The others screamed and tried to help, but the bear was too close. The guide ran to the raft, attempting to start the motor, but in the chaos, the bear turned her attention to the raft. She knocked it over, scattering the group and their belongings into the shallow water. The friends were now stranded, unsure of what to do. The guide instructed them to stay calm and avoid sudden movements, but panic had already set in. The bear returned her focus to Nicholas, who was bleeding and struggling to move. He had deep wounds on his leg and shoulder from the bear's attack. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, a ranger patrolling the area heard the commotion. The sound of an approaching vehicle and the sight of the ranger's rifle finally scared the bear away. The group was shaken and scared, their adventure taking a turn they could have never imagined. The ranger quickly assessed the situation, focusing on Nicholas, who was lying on the ground, injured and in pain. His leg and shoulder bore deep wounds from the bear's attack, and he was losing blood rapidly. The rest of the group gathered around him, shaken but unharmed. The guide helped stabilize Nicholas while the ranger radioed for medical assistance. A helicopter arrived shortly after, landing a safe distance from the chaotic scene. The paramedics worked quickly to tend to Nicholas's injuries, applying bandages and stopping the bleeding as much as possible before airlifting him to the nearest hospital in Kalispell. The others were also transported by the helicopter, as they were too frightened to remain in the area. At the hospital, Nicholas underwent surgery to repair the damage caused by the bear's claws and teeth. The wounds on his leg were severe, requiring stitches and treatment to prevent infection. Doctors were optimistic about his recovery, but he would need extensive rehabilitation and therapy to regain full mobility. The incident left the group deeply affected. What had started as an exciting outdoor adventure had turned into a harrowing ordeal. Back in their hometown in France, the friends shared their story, emphasizing the importance of respecting wildlife and staying cautious in remote areas. Their experience became a reminder to others about the risks of venturing into habitats where animals might feel threatened. The attack drew significant attention from local authorities and wildlife experts. Officials in Montana reviewed the incident and implemented additional safety guidelines for rafting tours. Guides were instructed to avoid stopping in areas with signs of recent animal activity, such as tracks or scat, and to carry noise-making devices to deter wildlife. Experts explained that the mother bear's aggressive behavior was likely due to her instinct to protect her cubs. They stressed that encounters like this are rare, but can happen when humans unknowingly intrude on an animal's territory. Educational programs were launched to raise awareness about how to minimize risks while exploring the wilderness. Nicholas eventually recovered from his injuries, though he carried scars as a permanent reminder of the attack. He expressed gratitude to the ranger and medical team who saved his life. While he remained passionate about the outdoors, he became an advocate for wildlife education, encouraging others to learn about the natural world before embarking on adventures. For the rafting guide, the experience was a sobering lesson. He admitted that he had ignored subtle signs of animal presence along the riverbank. The company he worked for implemented stricter rules and provided additional training for guides to ensure the safety of future tours. The attack left a lasting impact on the group and the local community, highlighting the unpredictable nature of wildlife. While the beauty of Montana's Flathead River continued to attract visitors, the story of the bear attack served as a warning about the importance of respecting nature and understanding the dangers it can hold. On October 4, 2024, a group of researchers from Uppsala University ventured deep into Sweden's Lapland region to study reindeer migration patterns. The team consisted of Jonas, an experienced wildlife biologist in his mid-30s, Emma, a graduate student passionate about animal behavior, and Sophia, a seasoned ecologist with years of field experience. Their work was part of a larger initiative to understand the impact of climate change on reindeer populations in Northern Europe. The team set up camp near a pristine lake surrounded by dense forests and rugged mountains. The air was crisp, and the wilderness seemed untouched by human activity. After a long day of tracking reindeer herds and collecting data, they settled into their tents, eager to rest. The evening was calm, with the distant calls of birds providing the only sounds in the quiet landscape. As the night deepened, the smell of their food, stored near the campsite, began to spread through the area. Unbeknownst to the researchers, a large brown bear was roaming nearby, drawn to the scent. The bear was likely hungry, as food becomes scarce in the colder months of autumn. Its keen nose led it closer to the campsite, where the researchers were fast asleep. The bear approached the tents cautiously at first, sniffing and investigating the area. Then, in a sudden burst of aggression, it tore into Jonas's tent. Jonas, startled awake, tried to flee, but the bear caught him, biting his leg and shoulder. His shouts woke Emma and Sophia, who scrambled out of their tents, panicked and unsure of how to respond. Emma reached for the bear spray while Sophia clanged pots together in an attempt to scare the bear away. The bear continued its attack on Jonas, pinning him to the ground. Its claws left deep gashes on his back, and blood soaked his clothing. Emma, trembling but determined, sprayed the bear directly in the face. The bear growled loudly and backed away, disoriented by the spray's effects. Sophia quickly helped Jonas, who was barely conscious, while Emma continued to make noise to ensure the bear would not return. After a few tense minutes, the bear retreated into the forest, leaving the campsite in chaos. Jonas was in critical condition, and the group knew they had to act quickly to save him. Emma located their satellite phone and called for emergency assistance, providing their coordinates to rescue services. Sophia worked to stop Jonas's bleeding, using their limited first aid supplies to stabilize him as much as possible. The cold air and the severity of his injuries added to the urgency of the situation. As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, the sound of an approaching helicopter broke the silence. The researchers waved frantically to signal their location. Jonas was carefully placed on a stretcher and airlifted to the nearest hospital, his survival hanging by a thread. The team, though deeply shaken, knew they had done everything they could in the face of such a terrifying ordeal. After Jonas was airlifted to the hospital, the remaining members of the research team, Emma and Sophia, were left in a state of shock. They knew the gravity of the situation, as they had seen firsthand how quickly things had turned dangerous. While they had hoped for the best, the events of the night had left them shaken. They both realized that the wilderness, though beautiful and serene, could be just as perilous. Once the helicopter departed, Emma and Sophia began the process of packing up their camp. They had to leave the site quickly and responsibly, as they no longer felt safe in the area. It was difficult to focus on the task at hand, given the trauma they had just experienced. They took a few moments to collect their thoughts and gather their belongings, feeling the weight of what had happened. As they worked, they couldn't help but think about Jonas's condition. The helicopter had been their only hope, and now they had to wait for news of his recovery. They knew he had been badly injured, but there was still a glimmer of hope that he might pull through. The pain of seeing their colleague in such a vulnerable state lingered in their minds as they made their way to a safer location. Once they arrived at a nearby ranger station, they reported the bear attack. The rangers expressed their concern and made it clear that bear attacks in the region, although rare, had been on the rise. This incident was a stark reminder that even the most experienced hikers and researchers were not immune to the dangers of wild animals, especially in remote areas where help could be far away. The rangers promised to send out a team to investigate and assess the risks in the area. In the days following the attack, the news spread quickly throughout the scientific community. Researchers and wildlife experts began to take notice of the increasing bear activity in the northern parts of Europe, prompting many to reconsider safety protocols when working in such areas. The incident sparked conversations about how to prevent similar attacks in the future and what steps could be taken to protect those who ventured into the wild for research and exploration. Jonas's recovery was slow and difficult, but after several weeks in the hospital, he was finally stable enough to leave. His wounds, though painful, would heal over time, but the emotional scars from the attack would remain. He knew that the close call had changed his perspective on the risks of working in the wilderness. The attack was a harsh reminder of the wildness of the world, even in places that seem peaceful and untouched. It served as a wake-up call for researchers and anyone who spent time in the wild, highlighting the importance of being prepared and aware of potential dangers. In the aftermath, Emma and Sophia returned home, forever impacted by the terrifying experience. The incident would be something they would never forget, and they would carry the lessons learned with them throughout their careers. On September 22, 2024, a group of vineyard workers in California's famous Napa Valley was hard at work harvesting grapes. The workers were an experienced group who had worked together for years, familiar with the rhythms of vineyard life. There was Carlos, the team leader, who had overseen the harvest for many seasons. His calm demeanor and years of experience had earned him the respect of the others. Then there was Carla, a young woman who had been working at the vineyard for a few months. She was eager to learn and always approached her tasks with enthusiasm. Alongside them were Miguel, a quiet but strong worker, and Grace, who was in charge of sorting the grapes once they were picked. Each worker had their role, and together they had made the vineyard a success. The morning had been typical, with workers moving between the grapevines, carefully plucking the ripe fruit and placing it into baskets. The sun shone brightly, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of the grapes. It was a busy time of year, and the workers were focused on their tasks, eager to finish the harvest before the end of the season. The vineyard was tucked away in a quiet corner of Napa Valley, surrounded by dense forest and rolling hills. While Napa Valley is known for its vineyards and wine, it's also home to wildlife, and the workers were aware that bears occasionally roamed the area. However, bear sightings were rare, and no one anticipated that this day would be different. While they were working in the rows of grapevines, sorting through the clusters, the workers suddenly noticed movement in the brush. A young black bear had wandered into the area. It seemed to be alone, likely separated from its mother, and appeared curious but cautious. The workers froze for a moment, unsure of how to react. Most of them had encountered wildlife before, but they knew that a bear could be unpredictable, especially if it felt threatened or cornered. The bear began to approach the workers, drawn to the scent of the grapes and perhaps even the food they had with them. Carla, who was closest to the bear, instinctively tried to shoo it away with a rake she had in her hand. Startled by her sudden movement, the bear charged at her. Before she could react, it knocked her to the ground. The workers quickly realized they needed to act fast to protect themselves and Carla. Miguel and Grace rushed toward the bear, trying to create noise to scare it away. Carlos, being the leader, shouted at the bear, waving his arms in an attempt to make himself appear larger. But the bear continued to focus on Carla, unwilling to retreat. The workers quickly grabbed anything they could find, including tools and equipment, trying to defend themselves and keep the bear from causing further harm. Despite their efforts, the bear did not stop attacking. It was only when the workers backed away slowly, making loud noises and retreating, that the bear finally seemed distracted. After a tense few moments, it left the area, disappearing back into the forest. Carla was badly shaken and seriously injured from the bear's attack, but she was conscious. The workers immediately rushed to her side, checking her wounds and making sure she was okay. They called for help, and soon, emergency services arrived. The bear was later located by wildlife officials, and steps were taken to relocate it to a more remote area. Despite her injuries, Carla survived the attack, but the experience would stay with her forever. The workers were left in shock, thankful that no one had been killed, but deeply affected by the events of that day. After the bear attack, the vineyard workers were in a state of shock. Carla, though injured, was able to communicate, and the workers did their best to keep her calm while waiting for help to arrive. Miguel, Carlos, and Grace tried to support Carla, checking her injuries and ensuring she wasn't in immediate danger of further harm. They were all shaken, but the urgency of the situation pushed them to act quickly. Carlos took charge, coordinating with the workers to clear the area and secure Carla while they waited for emergency responders. The workers knew the bear could still be nearby, so they stayed vigilant. Miguel, the quiet but strong member of the team, stood watch over the area, ensuring the bear didn't return. He used his knowledge of the land to scan the woods around them, aware that bears are often drawn back to the same places. Grace stayed by Carla's side, offering comfort and doing what she could to help with the pain. Though she had little medical training, she kept Carla steady and reassured her that help was on the way. They could hear the distant sounds of sirens, signaling that the authorities were approaching. The air was tense as the minutes ticked by, but when the rescue team arrived, relief began to set in. The workers stepped aside as paramedics took over, carefully assessing Carla's injuries and preparing her for transport. The emergency responders quickly got to work, stabilizing Carla and preparing her for a helicopter ride to a nearby hospital. The team was grateful to see her receive the care she needed, though they were still deeply affected by the events. They had experienced the terrifying power of a bear up close and had narrowly escaped a much worse outcome. Once the paramedics had taken Carla away, the workers began the long process of cleaning up the area. They made sure to secure the remaining supplies and equipment before the authorities arrived to investigate. Local wildlife officials were quickly notified of the bear encounter, and they took steps to ensure that the animal wouldn't pose a further threat to the workers or the area. The bear was later captured and relocated far from the vineyard, ensuring it would not return to the same area. In the aftermath of the attack, the vineyard workers received support from the local community and wildlife experts. They were given advice on how to handle bear encounters in the future, with a focus on prevention and safety. The event made local headlines, drawing attention to the growing number of bear sightings in California and reminding the public of the importance of being aware of wildlife when working or living in bear country. Carla's injuries, though serious, were not life-threatening, and after several weeks of treatment and recovery, she returned to work. However, the attack left a lasting impact on the workers, especially Carla, who had to deal with both physical and emotional scars. The vineyard workers became more cautious in their daily routines, taking extra care to avoid any further encounters with bears. The experience was a harsh reminder of the unpredictable nature of wildlife and the importance of respecting the animal's space.